Well, welcome everyone to this podcast. James Hillard, so glad to be with you for this conversation. Really at the highest level, we're going to be talking about how businesses out there can really simplify storage. We're going to talk about modernizing your storage solutions out there. We'll be putting a focus on HPE Nimble storage. We'll also be talking about pairing that with the intelligence of the latest HPE ProLiant solutions. We're talking Gen 10 solutions, the Gen 10 Plus solutions, the Gen 11 out there. All of those are powered by Intel Xeon scalable processors. We'll talk a little bit about how obviously those two companies, as well as the team at Precision Computer Services, really come together to be a great leader for all of you as you look to modernize storage. Let me talk about the guests who are on board so you can meet them, and then we'll get into kind of our conversation, broken down our conversation into two parts, and I'll explain that as well. From HPE, Joe Vidal is with us, Green Lake Chief Technologist there for North America. Glad to have him on board. From PCS, two folks join us. Ken Rems on board, Principal Architect of PCS. And then Andrew Pokladowski, also here. He is an account manager with the PCS team. So glad to have them both on board. And again, the three of them, first probably 15 minutes or so, that's where we'll be talking about, storage, some of the challenges out there, and what people are succeeding with as they look at more modern solutions. And then we do have a special guest on board with us today. The last 10 or so minutes, we'll be talking with Adam Graves. He is a former NHL New York Ranger, two-time Stanley Cup champ, and we're going to be discussing some other leadership and kind of teamwork concepts with him, which I think play nicely into our overall theme here. So that's what we're going to be doing. Adam is the co-founder of the Smile Zone Foundation. He's been recognized with a lot of honors out there. Some of the organizations that recognize his achievements, especially his community achievements, were things like USA Weekend. He was awarded the Most Caring Athlete, Sports Illustrated for Kids Good Sport Award, and the Sporting News The Good Guy Award. And so, again, I think all of that leads you to believe that he must have been a heck of a teammate. And so we are going to talk about some of those teamwork themes as well. So we're glad to have Adam on board. As we dive into our tech talk, and Joe, I'm going to turn things to you first here. And I've said the idea of modernizing data storage and that people are evaluating, right? Maybe we shouldn't do it how we used to, that we should do it how we do now. The big question is, well, why change, right? What is out there that's making people reevaluate? Why?
Well, there's a couple different dynamics happening, James. The biggest one is just the sheer gravity of the data, the amount of data, the velocity that we're creating data, and the volume. There's just so much data. We used to store these massive data lakes. We'd bring all the data into a central location, right? One copy of the truth and all that great stuff. But the problem is with doing that now, there's latency involved and you have to wait for the data to be accumulated. And there's too much of it. It costs too much to transfer it. And if any of it's being born in the cloud, now I've got data egress fees. So what we're starting to see more of is processing the data where it lives, processing it where it's being created, and then actually bringing together or federating the insights from the data rather than federating the data itself.
And a lot of folks, when they're evaluating this, Andrew, they're not looking to just one person. It's really a team approach. We need the hardware from the HPEs and the software in there. We need those powerful chips, Intel, right, at the core and center of the technologies. We also need teams that understand all that because it is getting more complicated out there. And that's where your PCS team comes in to help lead people along and understanding really the values out there, the newer technologies, the modern approach. Why do you feel the three together, HPE, Intel, PCS, are really the team to help people evaluate the why do we need to change potentially our approach to storage these days?
Yeah, for sure. So I think right now in today's climate, the average IT director or someone in the IT space, there's a lot on their plate, right? They're doing a lot of day-to-day tasks. They're looking at the organization from a very high level, as well as delving into a lot of deep day-to-day things. And I think one of the biggest issues that a lot of these IT directors face is with technology constantly changing and constantly getting better. it's very hard to stay on top of what are the big manufacturers, what are the big names doing nowadays? What is special about their solution versus other solutions? And that's where I think the partnership between HPE and PCS really shines, right? Because we have guys like Ken, who's on the line, who his job is to understand what is the value between the different big name manufacturers and why should you go a certain way. And that's one of his main focuses. And as a partner over here at PCS, we have an extremely strong partnership with HPE, and we're able to talk to the reasons. Hey, here's why HPE stands out above the rest. Here's why their solutions, you're going to see the most value out of it. You're going to get the most bang for your buck, and you're going to be the most successful in accomplishing your goals by using their solutions.
And it's not just speeds and feeds, Joe. We don't live in a vacuum of just this business needs a technology to do something. We've had a little thing called oversight in the world of business these days, state regulations, country regulations. There's a lot also going on. And so being able to be in concert with the partners out there like PCS, you all are able to know what's coming down the pipe. What do we have to make sure that we're in compliance with, things like that? That's a big deal that people need to consider and look to their partners for these days.
Absolutely, James. In fact, you just hit on one of my hot buttons, I should say, in most important topics, and that is the new PII regulations that have come out, right? While the state of California may have been first, since then already, New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey have jumped in. They all have existing PII regulations that require their state's residents' personal information stay within the geographic borders of the state. And in some cases, if it's transferred outside the state, the company that has done that has 24 hours to notify the individual. How are you going to police that? How are you going to stay in compliance with that? And by the way, looking at the federal GDPR regulation tracking site, and I can forward that to you if we want to do this as a follow-up, you'll see that there's 20 other state regulations that are right behind them, of 20 other states that are waiting to pass the similar regulations. So we're going to be dealing with this on a state by state by state basis. So we're going to literally have to radically change the way that we process store data.
And now I'm going to turn to Andrew so he can give us the next 20 states and what days they're going to be relating all that information. Right, Andrew? You've got it all for us?
All ready to go. Those states are cut away now, right? Cut away.
What we do know is as those come up, though, that's what Andrew and the team at PCS, right, stay involved as well. That's part of their due diligence. So you all, right, can be doing your day-to-day business. So I appreciate you playing along there, Andrew. Joe, one of the other things that I want to bring up. So we said, look, there is an importance and there's a reason why to look at new storage. Part of it is, look, just older technology can't cut it because of everything we're storing these days, the mass quantities of it. We're also saying there are regulations out there. So we might have some older technologies that are not up to spec. So we need to make sure, and that's where, the teams come together to do that for us. There are some people, though, Joe, especially given the year that we're in, they're going to say, yeah, but there's a little thing called cost. There's a little expense. And maybe they even go as bold as to say, and I've looked at some HPE and I'm worried it's too expensive for me. You hear that.
Sure.
How do you reply?
Well, I hear that and I say, you know what, don't worry about what the list price is for the entire box, right? The way that people are really purchasing storage these days and really leveraging storage is like they are the cloud, right? In a pay-per-use model. So you're only paying for what you use. And I think one of the things that Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is doing different from everybody else, or most everybody else, is that we're really actually only charging in a pay-per-use model for what you use, and we're paying for the amount of storage space that you take up. There are other storage vendors out there that are charging you for the amount of data that's stored, even if they are getting the benefits of, say, a 40-to-1 compression or deduplication ratio. They're the only ones getting that cost savings. The customer is not. They're paying for the storage space for the entire amount of storage, fully hydrated storage that's being stored. And we don't do that. We pass the savings on directly to the customers.
With that and the idea of kind of the cost and saying, hey, look, that's a conversation for later and don't dwell on that. What I do want to dwell on for a couple minutes here, and I think is useful in these types of conversations, is bringing on the aforementioned Ken Rems and Ken, talk a little bit about obviously the promise of moving to something more modern is it'll be better, it'll be faster, it'll be more secure, it'll make sure that you're in compliance, all those types of things. That's the promise. What I'd love to hear from you is what have folks within, say, the PCS ecosystem come back and said, as they've made the evaluation, Ken, of these modern systems, as they've looked and said, you know what, I think we can benefit from the promise. What are they saying that they are getting? What's some of the kind of data insights they're getting? How are they getting more management over their data, et cetera?
Yeah, and as Joe mentioned earlier, corporations are producing an exponential amount of data these days. Not only is the data growing, but it's being housed in many different locations. Some data is being housed on-prem, some is, say, in a customer data center. Obviously, data is being stored in the cloud, and some is at the edge in a distributed office. But no matter where it resides, businesses are challenged with making a data fabric so that users that require access to the data can get access no matter where they are, at any time, in any place. And then intelligent organizations, they'll leverage this vast amount of data and run artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms against the data to provide very valuable insights. These insights can be worth millions of dollars in additional business. It can help with brand recognition, or it can have other business benefits. And with HPE's GreenLake, it has the scalability that really data-savvy organizations require. The storage, with GreenLake, storage is provided as a service. It's a cloud consumption model, and it enables customers to scale quickly as their data grows without worrying about where or when they're going to have to deploy new infrastructure.
You mentioned the idea that there can be monetary gains, right? If we get into our data, can make good decisions, we can find a new avenue, and maybe we can, find a whole new business line and grow our company. There's also, Ken, stories I've heard, maybe anecdotally, you have one or two. There can also be, we get into the data thinking that we want to go someplace, and we fail quickly, realizing, no, that's not where we want to go. But we're able to do that quickly because the ease of access to the data, it's not duplicated everywhere. We have one true source to access. So it's that speed of business for today that it enables, Ken.
Exactly. Most corporations today say the most valuable asset they own is their data. And again, with the sophisticated AI and machine learning algorithms that exist, the more data you have, the more insights you can gather, the better you can market to your customers, and the more ultimately it means to the bottom line of the business.
We've been seeing this, Joe, more on the consumer news side of things with AI out there. And we know that it's all just about feeding it the data. And this is where I'm seeing a lot more of the business customers out there start saying, okay, that's fine. We do need to do things, though, business oriented. And wow, what if we could leverage some of that? And it seems like the only way to really leverage that is, again, access to the data. And that data mostly is going to probably be consumed in that hybrid type of model that some may have to be on-prem because of regulations, rules, et cetera. But a lot, people are going to be able to utilize the cloud advantages. And this is where GreenLake also has a potential, because of its longevity already in the marketplace, to really be a foundational takeoff place for companies these days.
Well, you're absolutely right again. And, it really comes into play for anybody that's got robotics, anybody that wants to do, say, augmented reality, leveraging AI. We now have some rapid modeling and learning tools that we just recently acquired in the last 30 days that allow us to radically accelerate the time to that ROI, accelerate the time to business value and to insights. With things like nearly instantaneous mirroring of, say, PDF maintenance documents with real-time views of the product or facilities that you're talking about, maintaining, and it'll marry the two in real time together in either a Google Lens view or a tablet, looking over top of the real thing. So think about that in healthcare or emergency workers, right? You've got the EMTs rushing on site at a car accident, and they can immediately look at the person and have an AI engine overlaying, their vitals and things like that, and showing them and walking them through how to save this person's life. Or a surgeon, how to do a very delicate surgery, overlaying on top of the actual individual brain, heart, whatever. That's where we are today, and it's amazing what we're doing.
There's some examples like that. And I think within the medical space, within pharmaceuticals, there are a lot of, I think, easy examples. The example, Andrew, of a surgeon really makes a lot of sense to me. But I think there are some businesses out there that might say, well, okay, maybe for them, but not for us. And so what I want to have you briefly chat about, Andrew, is your ability as PCS to go out and really understand your customers, what they're trying to accomplish, and maybe be able to say, hey, no, these things are for you. These tools can have an impact on your organization too. It's not just these often cited examples that are on the bleeding edge today. So what's your consultative type approach with folks so that they understand what the promise could be for them?
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think, a benefit to PCS is we work across many industries, right? We deal from small businesses to extremely large Fortune 500 companies and across many different sectors. And all of those companies are constantly working. They might have their individual issues, but when it comes to the bottom line, it's all about understanding what those goals are moving forward, and how could technology be used to best accomplish those goals. And there's endless different ways that the HPE technology can help those number of partners. But I think the big thing to really take out of that and focus on is how strong the partnership is here between a company like PCS and HPE, and our ability to really identify through multiple different use cases of other customers we have, identify those issues and what you're really trying to accomplish, not just the quick, kind of smoke screen of, hey, this is an issue I'm facing today, but no, what's the issues you're going to face in the long term? How could technology help benefit you in that long term? And by leveraging a partner like PCS and our strong relationship with HPE, again, you're able to make sure you're getting a solution that not only fixes your today problems, but fixes your year, 2-year, 3, 4-year down the line problems, to make sure that you're getting a technology that's going to last with you, it's going to grow with you, and you're going to see that real value and success over the long term.
Andrew kind of setting me up, Joe, for one of my famous "it depends" answers from you and other people. But I'm still going to ask the question because I do think it sets up right now. A lot of people, as we're sitting here today, we are concerned about our margins. The economy is something still on everyone's mind. So there's this idea, well, if I invest in something new now, when am I going to see that return on investment? How quickly can I justify this, maybe up to the C-suite, that yes, this is in fact the route we should be taking at this very moment? So Nimble storage, I go and say, hey, this is what I want. I want to have these ProLiant servers running on these Intel Xeon processors. Obviously going to cost a little bit. There's some type of cost there. When is there a general ROI type of number that you're able to talk to a lot of customers about to say, hey, after a short period of time, this is when you typically start seeing that return on these investments?
Of course, and obviously, I'd like to say that we do it all for free, but the truth of the matter is, that we typically do deliver that GreenLake private cloud experience for the first 90 days, in kind of a test trial environment. That first bill doesn't come till day 91. If we have done our sizing correct, right? If the Precision PCS team and HPE have worked correctly with the customer to size the solution and to price the solution, which we will always do, on as slimmest as we can. But more importantly, what we're finding is our costs are typically 1/3 to 1/2 the cost of doing the same thing in the public cloud. And that's because we can buy back their infrastructure, right, and upgrade them to something newer, faster, that takes fewer devices to get the same job done. And then we can build in a technology refresh cycle that keeps them updated at zero incremental cost to them. It's a flat cost, right? I'd say we customize IT infrastructure so you pay for only what you need. In fact, you're paying for only what you use. You need more than what you use, and we give you more, but you're only paying for what you use. And that's the beauty of the GreenLake model.
And again, the beauty, I think, as we've tried to share here today for everybody, the teamwork between these organizations, so that the Precision team can be working with you. Obviously they know the customer, they're there on the ground, they've had these long-term relationships, and then obviously the relationship back up the chain to the HPE team. But that's where it comes to really understand where you want to go. And Andrew, I love how you laid out, right? It's not just about now. It's somewhat even that concept of the delayed gratification, right? Yeah, hey, we got to change. change and make some changes now, but in the long run, that will benefit us. And to that end, I think that might make a nice little transition to the next part of our conversation with Adam Graves here. Before I get Adam in here and we start talking a little more on teamwork now, I do want to remind you all, and I'll put this up on screen and give you some more information at the end, but you can reach out to the Precision team, 203-929 4 zeros, right? 203-929-0000. Reach out, have a conversation with the team. Obviously, if you've got account teams in place at Precision, reach out to them. They'd love to hear from you and they can further the conversation, really just touching the tip of the ice, which now we move on over. See Adam smiling. He likes that little transition to the hockey world a bit. Again, Adam Graves joining us. Really glad to have him on board here. And Adam, you heard our conversation. We've been talking about teamwork, and that's something that I wanted to kind of really focus in on with you for a little bit. Teamwork, just going back to your earliest days, and I'm talking like 6 years old, 7 years old, whenever you first started playing some team sports, when did you start realizing that the team really was helping you, was benefiting you just as a person? The other people were important. It wasn't just you out there doing what you were doing.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in listening to this fantastic conversation, the theme that I got or took away was newer, faster. And at the end of your career, you're always looking for ways to stay fast, stay quick, take your game to another level, much like this conversation. And I will tell you, when I first started, I was 4 years old. I had never skated before. My dad was volunteering in a league in Toronto, and for whatever reason, they kept having to cancel games because there weren't enough players. So my dad went and sourced me out some used equipment. Never forget, my first helmet was loose on, just kind of floated on my head, and essentially put me out on the ice. And my job wasn't even to touch the puck, because I don't think I touched the puck in my first year and a half of hockey, because I couldn't skate. I just stood in one spot. And if you watch my career in the National Hockey League, I stood in front of the net. I did a lot of standing around, so to speak. So it paid it forward. But back in that, and it pertains to the team, the whole reason I was playing is so they didn't have to cancel games. It wasn't about what I brought to the team. You know what I did? I brought it to the team, but I brought it to both teams, that they had enough players so they could move forward with a hockey game. So my early years were pretty simple, and my job was quite simple and something I understood. Just get out there, take up some space, and have some fun. And for me, it grew from there. But again, teamwork is no different in business that is in hockey. It's all about caring about each other and respecting, however big or small your job is within a team or within an organization, that you find ways to respect each other and work together and try to help each other get to the next level, regardless of where you are. And I will tell you, in my career, when I first started in Detroit with the Red Wings, there were some games where I play one shift and maybe 30 seconds. In fact, I had a couple games where I didn't play at all. And then there was other games later in my career with the Rangers where I played 26 minutes a game, and I was on every power play, every penalty kill. So I played a bunch of different roles, but it really allowed me to understand the importance of each role that I played.
Well, and you're talking to the dynamic nature of a team, and some of the teams in business that I've been around in my years, the teams that have not succeeded, have stalled out, have even lost market share, have begun to fail, were the teams that, in my opinion, closely followed their role on the team. Oh, my role is this, and I'm going to do this, and I will not change. Whereas within sports, and I'm a youth coach as well, I look at the dynamic nature of the team, and teams do need to change. It may be from quarter to quarter, period to period. It may be game to game. It may be year over year, but there's a dynamic evolution. And I found teams that are willing to be in business, dynamic and evolve, those are the ones that typically succeed. What's your experience been there?
Well, you're talking about humility, and humility is for me is the greatest source of success, because you have to be humble to be able to listen. And sometimes it's not talking, it's listening, it's understanding, it's analytically going back in business, analytically going hockey's analytics is such a bigger part of the game, where you can now definitively understand where your deficiencies are, accept them as deficiencies, and figure out ways I think to correct them and to move forward. And I will tell you from, as I said early on, playing with some of these players that I did, and starting in Detroit, and having someone like a Stevie Eiserman, watching him. And I knew I could never play like Stevie Y. I mean, he was one of the special players. I was on his team when he scored 65 goals, 155 points. And I sat out a bunch of games. I can remember sitting out in Quebec with upstairs with Joe Sakic, and watching Stevie Y and going, I wish I could play like him. But you fast forward it, I'm in a game. I probably played about 3 shifts. We were down against Quebec. He played 18 minutes in the third period, something like that, 17 minutes. Jacques Demers, our coach, had him playing forward, defense. I go back into the locker room after he talks to the media. I'm sitting there with my, you know what he does? He comes over to me and he says, hey, Gravy, he says, come on in here. We're going to go out. We're going to go in the weight room. I spent an hour and a half with him in the weight room doing squats and everything else. I had only played 3 minutes and I couldn't keep up to him. But in my head, it was one of those lessons where the humility, where he had enough time to say, hey, this is important. And it's important because this, for us to have success, I have to develop. I was 18, 19 years old. Stevie was only 3 or 4 years older than me. But there's a reason why he had that success, that inclusionary behavior and the way he approached it. And for me, it was just one of those aha moments. And I had the good fortune of playing with Mark Messier in Edmonton. Same idea. And I know in this conversation, we've been talking about short-term goals, longer-term goals. When Mark came to New York, no one wanted to talk about a Stanley Cup because we had won one over 50 years. He said, wait. We are going to talk about it because that is where we want to be. And that's where we want to go. And what you talked about, if you want to evolve as a company, you've got to set goals, both short-term and long-term. And then you've got to be critical and humble in how you go about it, and understanding who brings what to the table, and making sure that you give people, the autonomy to grow, but at the same time you work together and you keep each other accountable.
Well, and that's leadership. That is leadership, focusing on the good of the team, the good of the rest. And yeah, you want good for you, but no, we are going to succeed here. And it sometimes takes a leader to step up and say what may sound audacious, but actually can be, driven if someone has that vision and leads. And is that something that you mentioned, that some of that anecdotal story and in the weight room, that was, you were an 18, 19-year-old. Did that help you as you evolved and grew into a leader in your own right on, championship teams, then later on in business as well?
Without question. And I will say from going for younger players that I was lucky enough to play with later in my career. I just returned home from San Jose, where they retired Patrick Marleau's jersey. He played the most games in the history of the National Hockey League regular season games, broke Gordie Howe's record last year. And to have the opportunity to play with him and also try to, share some of those stories and some of the lessons, because we all talk about experience. Experience is the greatest teacher. You experience something and you learn, but not everything can be left to experience. Sometimes it's someone that has a little bit more experience sharing it with you, helping you in different areas, or opening your eyes to different ways of looking at things. As you said, evolving as a team, evolving as a player or an individual. It's no different. We started Smile Zone, our foundation up here in Canada. And we basically started, we just said, here's an idea. The local hospital wanted us to come in and just donate to the hospital. We said, well, how about we do something that will have an impact? And we had a vision. And we didn't know how we were going to get to that vision, but we started by trying to bring together good people with great character, humble people. We put it together, and we're probably 12 years later, and we've done over 300 zones in Ontario and across Canada. We basically just put fun areas in hospitals and centers for kids that are facing obstacles. But our model is that we go into all the small towns that maybe don't have that leadership or don't have the opportunity to have these types of things put in their waiting room, whether it's gamification on the walls, gamification on the floor, treatment room where a young child is getting treated in a room, and you put in murals and maybe a gaming station on the ceiling, anything that'll put a smile on a kid's face. But it started with an idea, and then you bring people. And I will tell you that as much as our family and another family were the founders, it's been built by so many people. And the reason it is is because everyone's taking ownership. And when you allow people ownership and allow people to, I think, add to where your long-term goals are, all these different things. Yes, it starts, you have to have leadership, but you also have to be so inclusionary, and you can learn so much. And my dad always said to me, and that was my hero as a kid, he said, son, you're going to make mistakes every day, but you're going to learn every day, and make sure that you're humble enough to be listening.
I appreciate that messaging as well. Smilezone.com, folks, if you want to learn more about what the org is doing and what their team does, the impact they make, where they help out. Donations are accepted on the side, all that stuff. So smilezone.com. Before we go, you talked about experience. And so I want to bring back in Ken Rems, who has many years experience watching a whole lot of NHL and is a big hockey fan. I want to give him the opportunity to come at you, Gravy, for a question or two here. So he's got a couple of things that he wanted to toss your way. So Ken, let me slide the puck over to you.
Sure. Thanks, James. Hey, Adam, I think you're selling yourself a little bit short saying you just stood on the ice, but nonetheless, let me also say thank you for winning the Cup in '94 with the Rangers, so I no longer had to hear the 1940s chant from all the Devils fans that lived around me. But with that said, I had a couple questions about just general hockey in the NHL today. I noticed today the players, they're a lot faster. The referees call a lot tighter game. Like back when you played, they allowed holding, interference, hooking, clutching. It was a much more defensive game than it is today with guys flying around. Did you prefer the style of hockey back when you played, or do you like where the NHL is headed and how things are refereed today?
Well, I will tell you that I don't think the game's ever been as fast and as skilled as it is now. And I think in the playoffs, for me, is probably the best hockey that I've ever seen in the last couple of years, because it's a mix of old and new, because the game gets a little heavier. And that's the interesting part. You talk to teams in the National Hockey League, say you need speed and skill to get into the playoffs, but then you need to play heavier because the ice gets smaller. Guys get a little more aggressive, a little meaner. And I will tell you that I was considered a power forward. I'm about 6 foot, but at the end of my career, I had about 215. If I was playing now, because of the speed and there's no hooking, so I needed that to fight through hooks, to get to the net in the trap systems. And at the same time, there was fighting back then. So if you're into a tussle with someone bigger, you need to be strong enough. And I'll never forget, because I used to have those hand, and I could bury it up with both hands, but that's the way I trained. If I was playing today, I probably wouldn't train that way. I'd probably play 20 pounds lighter, and everything would be about speed and quickness and balance. And even the way players train now, it's so much different. Back then, it was a lot of bench press. In fact, when I first started in Detroit, you got on a scale, and basically they checked, they said to you, you got on a scale, pretty much a few push-ups, a couple sit-ups. That was it. That was in there. I don't want to date myself, but that was 86 when I was drafted. Fast forward to the end of my career, 16, 17 years later, you were doing VO2, you were doing the long ride, you were doing push-ups, all this stretching, all these, explosive type tests. Whereas now you look in New York, we have compressed air in the walls. Like, it's taken it to a completely different level, but with it has the skill is also followed. And all these players have skill coaches, strength coaches, nutritionists. They have never been more skilled and more depth of skill. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was a little bit of a gap between your top 8 players and your bottom 12, where now everyone's skilled. And if the best players in the game aren't at the top of their game, then they don't score. So for me, I've never enjoyed the game more than I do now, and the skill is through the roof.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, these players fly around. It's especially playoff hockey. To me, bar none, it's the best sport to watch when these guys start really laying it out during the playoffs, which will be coming up here in another month or two. Just one other question I had for you. So, you mentioned earlier you just stood on the ice, which again is definitely downplaying your abilities. But with that being said, you used to play a lot in front of the goalie near the crease on offense. Today, goaltenders, they're a lot bigger. They have bigger pads. They're even more athletic to the whole evolution of the sport. And often the only way you can score nowadays is through sort of like a deflection for the guy standing in front, right? A lot of times there'll be a slap shot and the guy in front deflects it, so it bounces in a tricky way and the goaltender therefore can't stop it. Do you think the NHL should do something to maybe limit the goaltender's ability or make it or open it back up for the pure shooter on offense?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because you look at a fellow like Chris Kreider and what great hands he has in redirection and certainly getting in the goaltender's eyes. So, and meaning that you're trying to screen him so he can't see that puck. And with the new equipment, everything's lighter. The pucks jump off their sticks, and players will tell you what flex they have, and you can see it in slow motion. The flex of those one-piece graphite sticks and how much that puck jumps off their stick. But the NHL, there's a lot more penalties now as well, as you know, and teams just play differently. They have that post up in the middle of the power play. They've made some adjustments. And I will tell you that this year, there's probably, I'd say 10 to 12 players in the National Hockey League that are on pace to score 50 goals, which you haven't seen in a couple of decades. And I just think it's because they've opened up those lanes. There's no center ice anymore. But as pointing to what you're talking about with the tips and rebounds and all these other things that are such an integral role in trying to score, I think it all gets around the fact that goaltenders have never been better. You look at whether it's our guy in New York, Shesterkin, the reigning Vezina Trophy winner, their hockey sense, the way they move, the equipment's lighter, their athleticism, and goaltenders back in our era typically would range in size from 5'10" to maybe 6'2". Now it's not very often you see any goaltenders that are under 6'2". Most of them are 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and they cover such a big part of the net. I've heard people say, we should make the nets bigger, this and that. I'm a kind of a historical guy. I love the game the way it is. And I think players have started to adjust. Look at the fella in Edmonton. I think he scored his 54th last night. And players seem to be evolving in the way they handle the puck, and certainly the 3-on-3 and overtime and how exciting that is, to the shootout, to everything else. The game for me has never been better. I think that offense seems to be increasing every year, and I think it's just because of the sheer speed and skill of the players. And it's a 12-month-a-year game. I look at my kids growing up. When I was a kid, I played hockey in the winter and soccer in the summer, and that's the way it was. Now it's like every other sport. If you're really good at something, they want you to play it 12 months a year, and that's where it's changed. I can't say as I necessarily agree with it, but it's equated into so much more skill development and everything else.
And with redirections being so prominent, could you see yourself scoring even more than one of your best seasons, where I think you had 50 plus goals in today's game, or would that not happen just based on how fast things move?
Yeah, well, I don't know. For me, I was lucky to play in the year I did, play with number 11 and number 2 and number 19 in Detroit, and the numbers keep going on. I was a product of my environment, very fortunate to play, and I look back fondly on those days.
Hey, Ken, good questions. I appreciate you throwing those and shooting those over at Gravy. Adam, I appreciate your time on the conversation, the insights into your playing career, and then your thoughts there on leadership and teamwork. Again, folks, if you want to learn more about the Smile Zone Foundation, then smilezone.com. And then as for the tech conversation that we had here, of course, we want you to reach out to the Precision team, precisiongroup.com online to reach out to them. I also want to hit you with that phone number one more time. It's 203-929-40. So 203-929-0000. Reach out to the team. They'd love to talk to you more about all that HPE has to offer in terms of storage, in terms of their latest and greatest technologies to really help your company evolve. With that, we're going to wrap things up. On behalf of Joe and Andrew and Ken and Adam, James Hillard here. Thanks for joining us, and we do look forward to talking to you all down the road.